Hello, welcome to the show. Welcome to Not Just Nintendo, the video game podcast that is about Nintendo. But it's not just Nintendo here at Not Just Nintendo, as I talk about other video games and other video game companies as well. Welcome back, everybody, this week to episode 33. Now, what's special about 33, you may ask? Well, this is actually a third of the way to episode 100. I know, I passed third grade math, alright? But I think it's pretty cool. We're a third of the way to 100. We just got to do all that we've done once or two more times, and we'll be at episode 100, which is kind of cool. Pretty cool to know. I don't know where I'm going with this, but the podcast has been going for a while now, right? This is actually, it's been quite a while. 33, 33rd episode. It's been going since like February now, so yeah, things are going great, right? On all those fronts. Things are going really great. So, thanks all for those who have listened to the podcast over all these times, since February or any time in between. If this is your first episode, welcome. If you've been listening since episode 1, then glad you could stay a while. Please keep watching. Speaking of keeping watching, for those who don't know, I feel like at this point most people are probably aware, but there is a new channel where the podcast is being posted on YouTube, so you can check that out. It's also being posted on the main channel for now. It will eventually probably be off of the main channel. It might be a little while, though, because so far, the main channel is still definitely the main place where people watch the podcast. So if eventually I can get people to watch it on the other channel, then eventually I can remove it from the main channel. Or not remove it, but like stop posting on the main channel from it, and we can kind of declutter the inbox and stuff. So if you want to watch the podcast on YouTube, I suggest you do it over on the new channel because, again, eventually it will move over there permanently. So that's the plan. All right. With that said, today we obviously, like normal, I guess last week was a little weird because we had the Game Awards nominations and stuff, so I was talking about that for quite a while, and that was kind of a big topic, and obviously I'm still rooting for Donkey Kong Bonanza. I think, so next episode is going to be on December 1st. So December 1st. We'll have the episode next week. Or not December 1st. December 2nd. As long as it's not late, it'll be December 2nd. And then it'll be December 9th. So we have 2 more episodes, and that'll be before the Game Awards. Because then the Game Awards is on Thursday, December 11th. And I usually try to live stream big shows like that. I live streamed Summer Games Fest back in June. I live streamed like the Mario Kart World Direct, which that was a terrible Direct, but we don't talk about that. I live stream a few things like that, and so and I think I live streamed one of the Nintendo Directs as well. I don't know, but anyways, so yes, that is the plan, to live stream the Game Awards on Thursday night. It's not for a few weeks, on December 11th. So tune into that. Speaking of live streams, I know I haven't done a live stream in a long time. I've been really itching to do a live stream. For my YouTube viewers is who I'm talking to here. Because I know there are probably some people out there that listen to the podcast and don't watch my YouTube channel. But for those who do, I'm hoping to do a live stream again soon. So stay tuned, right? I might be live again soon. That would be cool. So we'll see what happens on that front. It's been a busy year, honestly. I know I had a lot of YouTube plans and ambitions and stuff this year, and a lot of little things came up. And overall, I think, throughout 2025, I was a little bit less active than I was in October and November of last year. And so I apologize for that, So hopefully 2026 can be a little bit stronger. I can lock in a little more. That's the plan. So we'll see what happens on that front. I make no promises, but actually, that's not true. I'll make a lot of promises and not fulfill any of them, but that's not the point. Last week, I was complaining a lot. I know this is very shocking news for me. I was complaining a lot about how I couldn't get Yakuza Kiwami or Kiwami 2. Those games came out a couple weeks ago now, I think. It was November 13th, so it's been a little while at this point. Those 2 games came out on Switch too. Now, those games obviously have been out for years and years, but this was the first time they'd been on like Nintendo consoles. So I was trying to buy Yakuza Kiwami and Yakuza Kiwami 2 because I had played Director's Cut like a month ago. I think most of you guys probably know this because I've been talking about it on the podcast for a while. I have actually finally secured Yakuza Kiwami and Kiwami 2. I know. I did not expect this was going to happen for a little while. So, luckily, I was able to get to a store that actually had them because nobody around here likes to carry them. So, Boom. I have Yakuza Kiwami. I've been playing it. It's fantastic. It's just as good as the last one. I will be talking about that quite a bit here shortly. I probably will jump into that before too long. So, yes, I did pick up Yakuza Kiwami and Kiwami 2 on the Switch 2. That is 9 Switch 2 games now, so my Switch 2 collection is growing at quite a rapid rate. It's doing pretty good. Cool thing too, the Kiwami games were both only $35. I did know that going in, but it definitely, it's just another situation where like everybody online is complaining about how crazy expensive Switch 2 games are, and here I am getting Kiwami and Kiwami 2 for 35 a piece. I'm getting Pac-Man World 2 for $30. I'm getting Yakuza 0 for 50. I mean, like literally you can go anything that's not an official Nintendo game is like dirt cheap. Like so it's not true that every game on the Switch 2 is $70 like everybody seems to like to claim. It's very much there's a lot of things that are quite affordable on the console. It is not quite as extreme, not anywhere near as extreme as a lot of people seem to like to make it out. So I don't know. I'll get off my soapbox, but there's just another thing where people are wrong. So yes, Yakuza Kiwami and Kiwami 2, that's great. I did also grab a few more things for the collection. If you're new around here, I like to talk about this kind of stuff I get in my collection because I've got a video game collection of nearly 600 games now. I think I'm at 588. My plan is sometime pretty early next year to do a collection tour, maybe February or something, like somewhere in there. Not right at the beginning of the year, but, wait a little bit. I was originally going to do one before the end of this year, but I'm thinking that's probably not going to happen. So it looks like it'll be a next year thing. But yeah, at some point I am going to do a collection tour. For now, though, I'll just talk about all the new games when I get them. So I got a few new games. I have on Wii Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, and I have on PS4 I got Uncharted 4. So the two Mario and Sonic games, I have like 63 or I think 64 Wii games. So I have a lot of Wii games. I have a lot of the big heavy hitters and stuff, a lot of the first-party Nintendo stuff. So there's very few things that I was really missing on that front. But the Mario and Sonic games were kind of like pretty notable ones I was missing. Obviously, they're not Nintendo games; they're actually Sega games. But still, they're pretty big. They have Nintendo IP in them, right? In the form of Mario. Can't get more Nintendo IP than Mario, other than Ice Climbers, obviously. But yeah, the Mario and Sonic games, I have no intention of really playing them. But they were only like $10 a pop at this store, and they usually run for closer to 15. And I got the two of them, and I got Uncharted 4, which I think he had also for 10. I ended up getting the three of them. Mario and Sonic, the first one was 15, the second one was 10. Uncharted 4 was 10, so it should have been $35. He gave it to me for 20 because he liked me. We had a cool conversation. It was great. So I ended up getting quite the deal. These three games. So total, I only spent like $667. And I know I know all you people gotta get your laughs out there. But anyways, it was $6.67 a piece, basically, effectively, right? Because I got such a good discount on these three games, and so actually this worked out really well because I actually got Mario and Sonic at the Olympic or the Winter Games. I got both of them very cheap, much cheaper than they usually go for. They're not like expensive games by any means, but for games that I don't really want to play, I found spending $10-15 on them kind of pointless. But to get them for so cheap, I figured I got to get them at some point. They've just been ones that I've been kind of looking for a long time, but not really. Figured now was as great a time as any to pick them up. And then the same thing goes for Uncharted 4. I figured at that low a price, I might as well just grab it because I have the Nathan Drake collection on PS4, so that's Uncharted 1, 2, and 3. I am like halfway through Uncharted 1. I've not played it in a little while, but I still intend to finish that before the end of the year. I was originally going to say before the end of November, but I'm not entirely sure that's going to happen. It's possible still, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. It might be a December finish for me there. So who knows, but either way, there's 5 Uncharted games. Now I have 4 of them. I was originally going to get the Legacy of Thieves collection, which would include 4 and 5. But I found out that it's actually pretty much just as expensive to just get 4 and 5 separately, and it's a little bit easier to find than the Legacy of Thieves collection. And it's just one more thing I can add to my collection. I can take up more space. So I love taking up more space. And who's to say I can't just get, Uncharted 5 separately and the Legacy of Thieves collection at some point down the road. We'll see. If it's cheap enough, I might as well just get it, right? Because it's cool. I like collecting things, right? So anyways, but this seemed like the most logical way to get this game, especially with such a deep discount, so I grabbed those three. So there you go, 5 new additions to the collection in the last week. That's actually a pretty good week for me there. I think I'm up to 588 games, I'm pretty sure is my total last I checked. So 588, I just need 12 more to hit the big 600. That's pretty good. I'm not entirely sure that I'll get there before Christmas, but I assume with anything I get before Christmas and the stuff I get from Christmas, I'll probably be well over 600 at that point, or maybe just around 600. But either way, I'll be at 600, I think, by the end of the year. So that's pretty cool. And that'll mean that for my YouTube title next year, when I make that collection tour, I can say 600 plus games, right? It's all about numbers here, folks. So, anyways, I thought I'd just like to update you guys about my collection and how it's growing and stuff. I think it's cool to talk about. I like talking about my collection. I'm a big proponent of physical media. I could get into a whole conversation about how we need to preserve physical media, and I'm sure I will later on in the show, because the show's still young, right? So, let's not get too into that. I'm just babbling here, honestly. And a bunch of new people at school found my channel that hadn't prior. And so there's probably people watching this podcast, listening to this podcast, that know me in real life, and they're probably like, "What is this guy talking about?" Like, he's just rambling on and on. That's the show for you guys. That's what we do here. And I say we, I mean literally just me. So hello everyone that's new. All right, so I guess to not delay any further, I will talk about the games that I've played in the last week, which is not just Yakuza, believe it or not. I did actually play 2 other things, and I guess to leave you guys on a little bit of a cliffhanger, I might as well talk about the other 2 things first. So I'll do that right now. So 2 things that I played, besides Yakuza, that I actually beat in the last week. They're both pretty short little indie things. I was looking for a bunch of like shorter indie games that I have on Steam, because I have a bunch of stuff on Steam that I've been looking to play for a long time. A lot of it I got free. Actually, most of it I got free, or maybe not most of it, but a lot of it I got free. A lot of it I got for very cheap. I have Deku Deals. It's an app where you can actually track the digital stores for all of the different game consoles and Steam and stuff. And as much as I hate digital games, a lot of the indie games are either only available digitally, or, they're like $2 digitally versus 30 physically. So with those things, I'll buy them physical. I'll buy them digitally as long as they're cheap enough. I'm never gonna buy a digital thing for full price, because that's stupid. But if it's super cheap, like under $3 or something, is usually my limit. If it's like less than $3 on a heavy sale and also not available physically, then it's like a buy for me. You got to sell me on at least a few of those things. So I did play a couple of things. They're both very short. It might feel a little bit like cheating just to add 2 more games to my list for the end of the year, and it probably is cheating to add 2 more games to the list at the end of the year, but to be fair, they were also legitimate games that I've been looking to play for a long time, that I needed to play at some point, to cross off my list, and so I figured this is as good a time as any when I'm at a year where I've played less stuff, right? So, like, last year I ended up with, I think, 42 games, maybe 43 on my end-of-year list, and so I figure this year I'm on track to not quite hit that. I'll be close. So I might as well do whatever I can to try to bolster that up, especially when I'm playing games that I wanted to play anyway. So the first one, both of these I actually beat on November 21st. So one of them I beat pretty early in the morning on the 21st, and then the other one I beat like late in the evening. So they were technically in the same day, but only barely, because I beat the first one at like 4 o'clock in the morning and the second one like at 11 o'clock at night. So they were technically the same day. So the first one was Art House. Art House is not a super common thing. It's another one of those like free things. I think it's free all the time. I'm pretty sure. I could double check that. I believe I have Art House on Steam, but it is also on Epic Games. I'm pretty sure. I'm actually checking right now that it is always free, because I don't want to like spread misinformation. And if I'm gonna like recommend people to play something because it's free, I want to make sure that it is actually free and I'm not just crazy and I got it on some limited time like free giveaway or something. So while this is loading, I'll talk a little bit about Art House. Art House, as you can tell by the fact that it's a 20-minute game, it's not very extensive. It's not very long. It's a very short. It's a very short little thing. I suppose it's narrative driven. It follows um, a mother of two kids, and it's in reference to her mother, right? So the kid's grandmother, and she is a painter, a pretty good one, and she had dementia and she died. Um, so the idea is they're like moving, or not moving to the house, but they come to the house to kind of pack things up and stuff and get things in order after she's passed. I assume, shortly after she's passed. And so, the mother or the daughter of the grandmother who died is having all of these, memories, reminiscing on things based on things she sees in the house. So like she'll walk around the house, she'll see a painting, and then she'll think about the painting. So like that's what happens kind of at the start of the game. Eventually, not to spoil anything too crazy here, you get pulled into the painting, and there's like a whole thing that happens there. So I'm not gonna get too into that, right? And not this is like a crazy thing to spoil. Yes, Art House is always free, so you can play Art House at any time. I know I've just spoiled the whole game for you. No, it's not really a big deal. But yeah, it's a little narrative thing. It's by another group of like college devs, published by USC. So I've played quite a few games, not quite a few. I've played a few games of similar nature. I played Quiet as the Eyes earlier this year. There's been a few things like that. I think the Ware Cleaner was another one of those. That was a great game, by the way. The Ware Cleaner was great. And now I've played Splatoon, or not, sorry, not Splatoon, jeez. Yeah, Splatoon, made by college devs. I've played Art House, so that's another one of those. It's like that. It's made by college kids, so I'm not gonna be like too harsh or anything, right? But I've noticed with all of these games made by the college kids, they're all very short, and I'm assuming what it is that it's like probably part of their course to make these games, and they probably are meant to be kept short, or at the very least, they're not given much time to make things, and they have to make them short, just out of necessity, right? So either way, they're very short things. They're usually not like super in depth. They rely on like one main mechanic, and they're narrative driven. Every time they're narrative driven. And so that's just kind of the formula of these things. And that's not to say they're bad in any way. I think they're much better than I could make. Right? So I've got to give them credit here. All of these games have been fairly decent, right? I like them all. I don't expect them to score particularly highly on this year's list, because when I look at something that, I enjoyed for the most part, right? For example, right? We'll take a game like Donkey Kong Bonanza, and then we'll take Art House. Art House was 20 minutes long. All of Art House was good. I didn't have like any moment in Art House where I was like, this game sucks, right? Every part of Art House I was like, oh, this is cool, right? It was fine, right? It was good. There were no parts of Art House where I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible, right? But there were lots of parts where I was like, this is pretty good. We won't even take Bonanza, because Bonanza was incredible throughout. So we'll take another game like Splatoon 2, right? So Splatoon 2, I had some moments that were pretty high, like higher than Art House. I had a lot of moments that were lower than Art House, because I had a lot of annoyances with going around the world map and doing stuff like that. Despite the fact that, on average, each minute of Art House was probably better than each minute of Splatoon 2, though I think it's hard to say, it's close. I would definitely give the edge to Splatoon 2 and say Splatoon 2 is the way better game. And it's not just based on the fact that it's longer. I think just, overall, when you've got a game that's so short, it's difficult for it to focus. Not necessarily, it's very focused, but it's difficult for it to expand on its mechanic, right? And that's the thing, it has one mechanic usually, or one primary mechanic at least. So in Art House's case, when you get into the paintings, which is like halfway through the game, it's like 10 minutes in, your mechanic, it's like a platformer, basically. It turns into a platformer, and you can paint in objects. So you'll like be walking around the level, and then all of a sudden you'll come up to a piece of the painting that's missing. And you can paint it with a paintbrush you're carrying around, almost like an Epic Mickey kind of thing. You paint it in, and then you can copy it. And you can move the copy. So, like, you can copy it, like, you can, like, for example, they show you very early in the game. It's very clever in the way it does it. But you're walking around, you're doing a few jumps here and there, dodging a few things. And all of a sudden, you come up to a river, right? And there is a gap above the river, and it's an outline of a bridge. And so you have to hit the button to paint the bridge, and you walk across the bridge. And you're like, okay, cool. Now I know what to do when, I can paint stuff in. But then the next gap is also too wide for you to jump across, but there's no bridge. And that's when they teach you that you have to actually go back and pick up the bridge, copy it down, and then go place it in the new gap, and then you can walk across. So it's like, that's how they teach you the mechanics of the level, and it's very clever. There's a famous example in Super Metroid that a lot of people like to bring up. It's shortly after you unlock the ability to wall jump, I believe. Or maybe you don't unlock the ability, maybe you have it at the beginning, but this is the first time you need it. And you're in kind of this underground, I guess the whole game is underground, but you're pretty deep underground. And you're in this section, and you run down a hallway, and there are these little, like, furry animals at the end, and there's a wall you come to. It's like 2 walls, and there's a gap at the top, and you don't know how to get up there. And what you actually have to do is you have to wall jump up, and it's like a pretty precise timing. It's not easy to tell that that's what you're supposed to do to begin with. But you watch the animals, and with no text from the game, you can, by watching the animals, deduce that you're supposed to wall jump up it, because they wall jump up it themselves. And so it's very clever in how it presents itself. And they didn't have to put any words to tell you what to do. They did it through the level design. And in something like Art House, it does the same thing. That doesn't mean Art House is as good as much as Super Metroid, because again, it's very short. It doesn't have a lot of mechanics. The ones it does have, it doesn't do a whole lot with. It's very safe, obviously, because it's only 20 minutes long. And I'm not trying to bash Art House here. I'm not trying to bash college students. I'm sorry. If the developer of Art House is listening to this, which they're not, I think your game is great, right? My point here is I'm sure I'm going to hear about it from somebody when at the end of the year I put a game like Donkey Kong Bonanza, not necessarily Bonanza in front of Art House, but when I put like Art House as my worst game of the year, which I'm not sure that I will, but it'll be low down. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with Art House? You're bashing college students. I'm like, no, I'm not bashing college students. It's literally just, there's just not as many mechanics, right? Like, overall, I came out of Art House and I wasn't as impressed because there was less happening, right? And so it's, whatever. I'm not gonna get too much further into it. Art House was good. It was a great game. It's platforming. It's narrative. It's free. You can play it. Play it on PC. I don't think it's on any consoles though. So if you don't have a PC, then sorry. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. You don't get to play the incredible game that is Art House. That's all right though. But anyways, it's a decent game. So if you have a PC, play Art House. I'm not sure if it's on Epic Games. I'm gonna check real quick, see if it is on Epic Games. It's definitely on Steam. I know there's a lot of things that are like on Steam but aren't on Epic Games, and vice versa as well. There's things that are on Epic Games that aren't on Steam. So if I look here at Epic Games, no, Art House is not on Epic Game Store, so you can only play it on Steam. So there you go. So play it on Steam. It's a pretty solid game. All right, so moving on from Art House, the game that I beat in the same day as Art House is Florence. Now, Florence is a much more popular game. A lot of people are familiar with Florence. A lot of people have played Florence. It's another one of those games that kind of falls into the what people call the cozy category. And unfortunately, the cozy category, I'm not a big fan of the cozy category, generally speaking. It's not to say that this game was bad or that lots of other games were bad. I played a game, like I played Unpacking last year, right? And Unpacking was fine. I thought it was a decent enough time. I played Donut County, right? There's a lot of these things that a lot of people put into that camp of being a cozy game. And that's not to say that the game is bad. It's not to say that the game is good. I think personally there's more nuance to that. There's people that are like, oh, I like cozy games. And I'm like, well, that's stupid, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. That's a dumb perspective, I think. I think it's a silly category that's too vague. On top of that, there's a lot of games that, like Animal Crossing specifically, that have been lumped into the cozy category, and now I'm like being like belittled for playing a game like Animal Crossing because I'm like, oh, you're one of those Animal Crossing people. I'm like, well, no, not really. I like the old games, and so now I get lumped in with the, so anyways, I don't want to go off on a whole side tangent here. Actually, I do want to go off on a whole side tangent here, but I'll spare you the details. My point is, I don't like the label of cozy games, but Florence is a cozy games. So there you go. As much as I don't like the label, that's what I'm gonna call it because that's what everybody calls it. So there you go. Florence is an example of one of those cozy games, and I'm doing this with air quotes because like I said, it's a dumb category name. Florence is also a very short game. It's not quite as short as Art House. It's 45 minutes long. I think how long to beat said like an hour maybe. I beat it maybe a little fast. I don't know. It's whatever. I don't think it really matters at that point. It's like, oh, it's less than 2 hours. All right, cool. Let's go do it. You know, in an afternoon or whatever. Not necessarily an afternoon, but like in a very short expanse of time. Um, Florence, similarly to Art House, is very narrative based. It is pretty much solely narrative based. There's like nothing else. There's no actual like gameplay really of any sort. It's literally just it's a story. Honestly, it's like I guess I would say it's cinematic, but it's not exactly cinematic. It's not what you're thinking like movie like, right? But it's narrative. It has you know there's a lot of like small tasks and stuff you have to do. Um, it comes down largely to you'll have like a comic strip basically, and you'll read through the comic strip and you'll go through Florence. She's actually the main character. You'll kind of go through a chapter of her life, right? And it's literally phrased as chapters. It's like 26 chapters or something. There's quite a few chapters, and they're all very short. But it basically outlines her life, her day-to-day work. She finds a boyfriend, and maybe I shouldn't. I'm not going to spoil too much, but basically, it deals with her interpersonal relationships, I suppose. Um, so there you go. That's Florence. I don't know. I mean, like, I'm not really entirely sure. This is one of those ones that I think it's difficult to talk about. Like, is Florence amazing? Is it incredible? No. I've heard some people say it's great. This is really, honestly, it's not my style of game. It's not the kind of thing that I'm like super into. I did think it was fine. It was good. It was cool. It was a fun time. It's 45 minutes. If this game was 5 hours long, then it would be bad. It would be a bad game, right? And I'm sure most people out there, not most people, but a lot of people out there would feel like it was great. They'd be like, "Oh, I'd love 5 hours of this game." I would not love 5 hours of this game. An hour is pretty much my limit. So this is a fine game. It's pretty decent. It's solid. It'll probably go pretty low on my list because honestly, at this point, like I just don't really beat most games if I don't like them. Like if I start playing a game and I get pretty far in, or not necessarily pretty far in, I usually before I get too far in, I know whether or not I'm going to finish the game. Generally speaking, that's not to say for sure. Like there's been examples where I've finished very far into a game, but broadly speaking, if I start a game and I get more than 2 hours in, I'm probably gonna finish the game. And if the game's less than 2 hours, I might just finish it anyway, because like why not, right? And if the game's less than 5 hours, then it's kind of a toss up, But generally speaking, I don't really finish bad games. I don't like finishing bad games. I rarely do it. So like last year, I think there were probably maybe 2 games on my list that I would say were kind of bad games. And this year, there might be one. It's kind of hard to say. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot this year either. So, generally speaking, I like everything I play. And Florence, again, is a good game. It's not going to be in my top 50. As much as I really don't have that many things that aren't in my top 50, Florence is definitely one of those added to that list because, like I said, it's really not my cup of tea. It's too much of a, in quotes, cozy game for me. There's not any sort of real gameplay, and generally, it's I like in games. I'm not really there for the story. I know this is probably shocking coming from the Nintendo guy. I'm not really there for the story for the most part, and so I'll argue all the time with my friends or people I know, and they'll be like, "Man, why do you like all those Nintendo games? The story sucks." I'm like, "Yeah, the story does suck. Yeah, that's true. Most of the time, the story's not great, but I don't care. It's about the gameplay. It's about the game feel. It's about the polish, the level of polish they put into their games. It's about those aspects. It's about the progression of mechanics. Oftentimes it's about puzzles. Like all these things that I appreciate about games. It's about music, right? Atmosphere. I think Nintendo does all that stuff better than anybody else. Those are the things that I like most about video games. Now look, stories can be great. Yakuza, that game would not be as good if its story wasn't as compelling as it is, right? I mean, so like, there's definitely a place for stories, and there are some genres that very much need stories. I think RPGs are a good example, right? If an RPG has no story at all, well, it doesn't really work, does it? Now, I know, the Mario RPGs, we talk about like Paper Mario, or we talk about Super Mario RPG, um, or Mario and Luigi. A lot of people criticize those games. A lot of people love them, but a lot of other people will criticize the games because they have such weak stories or such underdeveloped stories. And I generally argue with that sentiment because, especially the older ones, do actually have, I think, quite a well developed story. And the newer ones, while maybe they don't necessarily have quite as well a developed story, they at least have some story. It is not no story. For sure, there is a story. Whether it's as high a quality as some of the other ones, that's up for debate. Either way, though, the Mario and Luigi games I think are great mechanically, and that's why I like them. That's for me. So generally, mechanics can carry, it can make or break a game, right? So like a narrative only game can be fine if it's very short, but a narrative only game usually only works if it's a short game for me. There might be some examples here and there of exceptions, but generally speaking, if it's going to be narrative only, it's got to be very short. And even if it is narrative only, there's got to be some gameplay, otherwise it's probably not getting super high on my list. And so Florence is one of those examples where, yes, thankfully it was short enough that I didn't really need the gameplay, but it's not going to be elevated up my list because there was no gameplay. And so I guess if we want to talk about some of the puzzles, I mean, they're pretty basic for the most part. You don't always know exactly what to do to begin with, but most of the time you do. And so there's a lot of examples of puzzles where you just have to, wash a window, or you have to scrub away you have like an image that you've got to uncover. It's like covered in sparkly soap or something, and you got to uncover it and see what's below it to reveal part of the comic strip. Or at the beginning, there's one you wake up and you have to hit the button to snooze your alarm a few times, and then you wake up and you go to the bathroom and you got to like brush your teeth, and so you've got to like move the joystick back and forth and like, oh, you brush your, like, so there's like little things like that. It's like, okay, it's interactive. It's like, all right, get a little dopamine in the brain, right? I mean, it's pretty mindless, to be honest. It's about the story, right? It's very much, it's like a YouTube video. It's like watching a YouTube video. Every now and then there's some gameplay. And so it's not my cup of tea. I know it is a lot of people's cup of tea, and that's cool, and I'm happy for those people. And I'm glad I play games like these every now and then because I think it's good for me to have opinions on them and stuff. And I mean, I'm still glad I play the game, right? Even if it's, not necessarily the best game of all time, I'm still happy to play it, right? It's another one for my numbers. It's another one that I can think about. It's another one that, years down the line, I can play a game and I can be like, oh, it's kind of like that one section on Florence. I like to have instances like that where I can kind of think back to older games. So there we go. That's my time with Art House and Florence. I beat both of them on the November 21st. And I guess we'll get the cat out of the bag. We'll address the elephant in the room. We'll touch on the cucumber in the vegetable salad. I don't know, I'm kind of running out of analogies here. We'll talk about Yakuza Kiwami. So, as I've talked about quite a few times now, this is not news to anybody. Yakuza Kiwami and Yakuza Kiwami 2 have just come out on the Switch 2 just a few weeks ago. These games are like light remasters of the PS3 version of these games. So basically, the first Yakuza game originally came out on the PS2, and then Yakuza 2 came out, and those two games were remade, or remastered, sort of. They were remade, I would say. I'd call it remakes, on the PS3, under the Kiwami name, and then they were ported over to, like, PS4, and now they're being ported again. They're as timed exclusives for the Switch 2, and they will be coming to PS5 and stuff in a few weeks. So they're timed exclusives, but not for super long. I played Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, which was the sort of definitive edition, I guess, of Yakuza 0, which is the prequel to the first Yakuza game. And that came out on the launch day of the Switch 2. I played that and finished it up last month. I think it was last month, in October, yeah. And that game was fantastic, and I've started playing this one, and it's great too. I really was skeptical that the story could be as compelling in this Yakuza game as it was in the last one, because it felt like there were just so many bombshells dropped in the last one. And an important thing, too, is that Yakuza 0 follows two separate characters and two separate stories, whereas this game, Yakuza Kiwami, only follows one character, and it's, like half as long. It's quite a bit shorter. So I was thinking it would be a little bit less developed, but actually, I think the story is maybe more compelling, and it might be partly because there's less distraction, right? You're constantly in the story. There's not like something else to come in and interrupt and make you forget details or anything. It could also be partly because I'm better following things, having already played one of these games. There's probably a number of reasons why that could be, but yeah, so far the story is very compelling. It's great seeing how they've managed to call back to Yakuza 0, even though this game actually originally came out first. And so it really makes you appreciate more how well crafted Yakuza 0 was, because it so flawlessly introduced the story that would first, debut in the original Yakuza game. And so it really is an incredible job that the Yakuza team has done on this game. As far as the Switch 2 version, I mean, it runs great. All the UIs and all that stuff, everything is very similar to Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, so it feels like a very natural transition. Honestly, they could have put all three of these games on the same cartridge, and it wouldn't be weird at all. Like, they would all basically be the same game. It's basically just continuing the story. And I'm not going to spoil anything about the story. I'll just say one thing, and that is that there is a time jump pretty early in the story, and I'm not going to give any details as to why, but there is a time jump away from the directs, or not the directs, the events of Yakuza 0. My one major complaint so far is that following the time jump, it seems like there's very little change that has happened in the world, in the city of Kamurocho. That's the city that the game is set in. There's very little, it seems, that's actually changed in the city. There's a few things here and there, but very little has really changed. Honestly, it's really it feels like, you miss 10 years of story, but then you come back and only like 1 year of actual development has happened, and so it seems a little weird. And I'm sure a lot of it is so that you weren't like unfamiliar with a lot of the events and a lot of the characters and stuff. But I think it would have made a little bit more sense to either shorten the amount of time of the time jump, or to, better change the story to suit the length of time that was jumped. Either way, that's a pretty minor complaint. I'm not really too upset about the game not being realistic in its story. Like, it is what it is. It is a little strange, though, I've gotta say. And I mean, to be fair, Yakuza is always a little strange, right? That's like a lot of what's great about the series. It is very strange, it's zany, it's crazy, it's weird. I've played about 4.5 hours of Kiwami, and I feel like I'm probably moving at a pretty good pace. How long to beat says, I think, 18 hours for this game. I'm going to guess I'll probably do it in that, or maybe even a little bit less, because I do intend to do some side quests and stuff, which could lengthen it, but at the same time, I'm definitely moving a little bit faster, having already played one of these games before, so we'll see what happens, but that's kind of my theory. One other complaint I do have about Kiwami, and I'm sure, I mean, I'll talk a whole show about Kiwami at some point, and I'll probably talk about it in between those shows as well. The big thing that I will say about Kiwami that I found jarring is that there's no English dub. So for Yakuza 0, there was an English dub, right? Obviously, originally the game was Japanese, but there was full English voice acting for pretty much everything. There might have been a couple things here or there, but basically everything is dubbed in Yakuza 0 Director's Cut. And so I would have the subtitles on, but I could also listen, right? And it was a nice way to kind of be immersed in the world, right? But this one, it's a little jarring that this is all Japanese. And I know there's a lot of people out there that love Japanese voice acting and they don't like English dubs. And that's cool, but I think, the wider audience, the average person that they're trying to get hooked into the Yakuza 0 series, because really, them releasing these games on Switch 2 is really just a way to introduce new people to the series. People on Nintendo audiences, most of them probably have never played a Yakuza game. And so putting out Yakuza 0 when the Switch 2 came out was a great idea, because there was very little of that single-player, story-based stuff at launch. And so they probably got a lot of people that had never played Yakuza, or potentially never even played a game of its nature, that had bought a Switch 2 early on. And so the idea is like, okay, Yakuza 0 was very accessible with its English dub and that kind of thing. It was quite easy for, new people to get in. But then they put out Yakuza Kiwami shortly later Obviously, the idea you would think is that it would be appealing to the same audience that played Yakuza 0 and got hooked on the series, and yet it's far less approachable than Yakuza 0 was, simply because it doesn't have an English dub. And so I think that's kind of a weird thing. It's very strange. It's not that big a deal, right? Like, it's fine. I can read the subtitles. I'm not too bothered. Every now and then, though, I'll, like, look away for a second, and I'll be like, oh, shoot, I missed a voice line, and I've got to, like, kind of try to piece things together. And so every now and then it can be a problem. But generally speaking, it's not really a huge deal. But it does get a little bit irritating, and honestly, the bigger reason why I'm complaining about it is not because I'm actually that upset, but more that I find it weird that there's a weird, like, inconsistency, especially when pretty much every other aspect of the two games flows seamlessly from one to the other. You have a lot of the same combat abilities, you have a very similar map, almost identical. There's a few small changes, but almost identical a map. You have a very similar UI. Like, all of this stuff is very similar. There's a lot of things like that. But then you have, like, a weird thing here or there, like the English dub, right? And so it seems weird that they would do something like that, and kind of mess up the the game's approachability in that sense. Now, look, again, I don't mind. I love the combat, and I love the gameplay of the game so much, and I think the story is still compelling, that I'm just going to continue to play the games. And I know I read somewhere that it's already been confirmed that Yakuza 3, or Yakuza Kiwami 3, which this is actually the first time they'll be remaking Yakuza 3, and that game is supposed to have an English dub. I assume because it'll be higher budget, it'll probably be a full-price game, where director's cut was $50, and each of these were only $35. So yeah, I imagine when I get to Kiwami 3, which that's not coming out till February, I'll probably pick it up on launch day, though, or as close to it as I can. When that game comes out, I'm going to imagine that, or I've already heard that it will have an English dub. I think that was confirmed. And so it's going to be kind of weird playing a game with an English dub, and then two without the English dub, and then back to the English dub. Like, I don't know. It's going to be a bit strange, a bit jarring, but overall, it's not that big a deal. I mean, it is what it is. I'm still happy to play these games. They're great games. The story is well written, and the gameplay is incredible. So I can't really complain too much, but I'm going to anyway, because you know me. I guess I should say that I'm not entirely sure if Kiwami 2 has the voice acting or not. It may. I don't know. I'm going to assume it probably doesn't if Kiwami 1 doesn't, but I don't know. I would have thought Kiwami 1 would have as well. So we'll see. Maybe the second one actually does have voice acting again. But at the very least, the first one definitely does not have voice acting, which, again, I found odd and I find a little bit irritating, but not, like, too bad. Like, it is what it is, right? So that's Yakuza Kiwami. I don't think I really need to get too much into any more details. I feel like that's probably good enough, right? Like, I don't think there's a ton more for me to say at this point. I don't want to talk about any story stuff. I'm probably going to wait to talk about any story until I've actually beaten the game. And then on top of that, the gameplay and stuff, it's not like a huge change right off the bat. So I probably want to wait and talk about a lot of the big gameplay mechanics and stuff at the end of the game, or at least later in the game. Because one of the things I've noticed is that after the first game, or I should say, the prequel, after Director's Cut, you get all of these abilities that you gain throughout the game with the different combat styles and stuff. And now, in Yakuza Kiwami, a lot of those abilities are now locked again, and you have to level up again to re-get them. And so it's kind of a weird thing where, like, I'm unlocking abilities that I already had before. And so on one hand, it's, like, not as exciting to unlock abilities. But on the other hand, I'm like, waiting. I'm, like, on the skill tree. I'm like, okay, I can't wait till I get this back. Or I can't wait till I'm able to do this again. And so it's kind of weird. I could see why people would dislike that, because it's a little annoying not having access to some of the abilities you had access to in the previous game. But at the same time, I'm also really excited to get past these abilities and see what new stuff they've implemented after you've unlocked all the other stuff. And also see what abilities are missing even at the end of the game. You have 4 combat styles. In Director's Cut, you actually have to unlock all 4 styles throughout the game. And in Kiwami, you start right out of the gate with all 4. And you can kind of put your experience points into whichever one you see fit. Or you can sometimes spend XP on multiple. Like, you can unlock ability that can be used in multiple styles, but you kind of have to focus on whatever one you're going for. Personally, I'm all about the rush style, which is basically, you don't hit very hard, like, you don't do a ton of damage, but you're very evasive. You can get out of the way very easily. And honestly, that's about it. It's about speed. It's about speed. It's not about doing much damage. It's about doing speed, getting out of the way. Not doing speed. Quickly doing a little bit of damage and then getting out of the way and then coming back and doing a little bit more. And so, there's a lot of things that are a little annoying about using it, right? Like you can't knock people down very easily. But when you're using the rush mode, it also is quite easy to not get knocked down yourself. So I don't know. That's my personal style of choice, and maybe in some other game I'll choose to change it up. But for now, that's what I'm going with. That's what I used for most of Director's Cut as well. I did change here and there, but I think most of the game I probably used Rush. Um, so, anyways, it's the same four styles from the last game. The combat is very similar. I'm a little worried that maybe in a few more games the combat could start to get a little old. I'm hoping it doesn't, because it is a very good combat system, but I feel like just about anything can get old eventually, right? So we'll see what happens. Hopefully it'll be alright. Maybe they'll make some major changes in some of the later games coming soon. Hopefully, we'll see what happens. That's the plan, I imagine. So we'll see. I know some of the most recent games changed up combat significantly, and they've gone all turn-based, which I'm very excited to see, because as much as I love this style of Yakuza combat, I'm also a big fan of turn-based RPGs, and so I kind of want to see, like, I might enjoy both styles of combat equally, and so I would be curious to see what the change up is going to be like. But I want to play all the games, and the story is very important to the series, so I might as well just play them all in order, right? That's what I figure. I know some people are sometimes like, oh, why are you playing them in order? I'm like, because why not, right? That's kind of my mentality, my philosophy. I guess that's, like I said, that's probably all I've got to say about Yakuza for now. I hopefully will finish it before the end of the year. That's the plan. I'm not planning to finish the second one before the end of the year. If by some miracle I do, then fantastic, but I'm not, like, going to be too worried about it. If I can't finish it by the end of the year, that's fine. I'm not going to, like, try to push it too much. I'd rather finish up a couple of the other things that I've been needing to clean up before the end of the year, and save Kiwami 2 as, like, a January game. So, that's the plan. Alright. That's going to be it for me for the first segment. Let's take a music break, and we'll get back to do some news. I imagine this episode will be a little bit shorter here because I don't have a ton of news to talk about, and also I would like to try to record some videos tonight because it's actually been a while since I've put out other videos besides just the podcast, and we're on a school break now. We officially have off of school for a few days, so I'm trying to get some stuff done in that time. So that's going to be it for me. I'll see you after the music segment. Alright, everybody, welcome back. Welcome to the news segment. Now, this is the segment where we talk about news. I know this is probably pretty shocking news to everybody. Hey, I just said news 3 times in a row. That's news. But anyways, let's talk about some news. Oh my god, I need to stop saying news. This is going to get old real fast if we keep talking about news. Let's talk about some news that's been going on in the last week or so. There's not really a ton to talk about today. Definitely a lot less than last time, because last time I had the whole, like, sub-segment basically talking about the Game Awards nominees and stuff, and we don't have anything quite that big this time, although we will pretty soon in a couple weeks, because after the actual Game Awards show, I'll probably take an entire episode, basically, to talk about the outcomes of the Game Awards, and also, like, what things got announced and stuff, so that'll be a whole show in a few weeks, but for now, I don't have a ton to talk about in way of that stuff. I do have just a few things picked out, though. I actually read this on Game Informer. There is a new Croc crossover. Now, I swear, Crocs, they make Crocs for everything. Like, I mean, they probably made a freaking, I don't even know. They made a Croc for everything, right? You name it, you name the IP, there's a Croc partnership with it. I think Crocs are stupid, right? Those things aren't even foot-shaped. I don't know why anybody would wear those things. I did have them when I was, like, very little. Like, I was, like, 7 years old. I had a pair of Lego Crocs. Maybe even less than that. I might have been like 6. And I mean, like, they're cool as a kid, right? I was like, oh, this is kind of neat. But I feel like it's a little silly, I think, to wear them, when you're older. But anyways, not to start any more arguments, but there we go. I'm not a fan of Crocs. However, some of the video game Crocs are kind of neat, I've got to admit. There was a Animal Crossing Croc partnership that happened just a month ago or so. It was pretty recent. And now this is probably the best one I've seen. This is an Xbox Croc partnership. Now look, I don't like Crocs, I don't like Xbox, but I've got to say this is a very good Croc design. If you've not seen the Xbox Crocs, which by the way, that's a really weird thing, the Xbox Crocs, you've got to look up a picture of the Xbox Crocs because man, these Crocs are really something. it's great. I don't even know I don't even know what to say about these things. Like man, it's crazy. They've got the buttons. They've got the buttons on the shoe. Now I don't know actually if the buttons are going to be like pressable. Right, I kind of hope so, because that would be kind of, I mean, I'm not getting these Crocs. Like, I'm talking like I'm going to get these Crocs. I'm not going to get these Crocs, but I really hope that somebody I know gets these Crocs, because that would be awesome. I just want to, like, see, like, I just want to look at them in person and be like, oh, these are cool. Maybe I'll go to the shoe store and look for these Crocs just to look at them. I'm not going to buy them, because that's dumb. They're $80, which is crazy as well, but we don't need to talk about that. But anyways, like I said, this is such a nothing. Like, what am I talking about with Crocs? Who cares? I think they're a cool design. You have analog sticks on the Crocs. You've got buttons on the Crocs. You got like the Xbox logo. It's great. It's fantastic. And they come with some like little what are those things called? The things that go on them, the like things that go on the Crocs, like you put them in the holes or whatever. I don't know. They come with a few of those. There's one with Master Chief. There's one with the Vault Boy from Fallout. There's one with Sea of Thieves. I don't know. There might be more here, but that's what I'm seeing in this picture here that I'm looking at. But anyways, I just think it's cool. I think the actual design of the Crocs is awesome, even though I'm not a fan of Crocs myself. I think Nintendo should do a partnership with Crocs, and they should do, like, black Crocs, but then, like, the inner sides are red and blue to look like the Switch 2 Joy-Cons, and they have the buttons for the Joy-Cons on them. I think that would be cool, and then the charms could have Nintendo characters. That would be pretty neat. I know they've already done a couple Nintendo partnerships for Crocs, but I think that would be a nice one for them to do. I don't know. I think it's cool to see these Croc partnerships, even if I don't like Crocs. All right. Ad Hoc Studios. They're the people that made Dispatch. I don't think I've talked about Dispatch at all on the show because I've not played it. I think it's interesting to talk about, though, because I did not realize quite as how big a deal this game was. Like, I had heard about Dispatch a while back. But it turns out this is actually like a much bigger deal than I thought. And I just randomly got recommended an article, and so I just wanted to talk about how Dispatch, for me, it just came out of nowhere. Like I've not played it. I probably will at some point because I've heard so much about it. But I have people that I know, like at school and stuff, talking about this game, and like it got nominated for one of the like debut indie game categories. It might have got nominated for other stuff too, but yeah, I heard that there are some rumors that they might be working on the next chapters of Dispatch. For those who don't know, this is like I'm probably the worst person possible to explain this, but it's a superhero game, and it's like chapter based, like the old Telltale games, like The Walking Dead or what else? I mean, like there's like there were a lot of big ones. There's that one with all the like fantasy characters, like with the werewolf and stuff like that. There was Kentucky Route Zero. I'm not sure if that was actually a Telltale game or not, but that was another pretty popular chapter-based thing. Obviously, you had like more Minecraft story mode and things like that, but anyways, so it's another one of those things. And honestly, those things are not super popular anymore. Also, Deltarune is a pretty big example, and that is actually popular today still. So anyways, for a while there, they were like all the craze, these like chapter-based games, and Telltale really kind of started that, and then they kind of fell off. Their games lost a lot of popularity, and so a bunch of people left Telltale, and they made this new Ad Hoc studio, which are they're the developers behind Dispatch. I didn't really have anything necessarily to say about the game, but I randomly got recommended an article about it, and I was like, oh, I need to mention Dispatch because I think it's a cool idea, and I wish We had more. I think that's a great thing for indie games to do, especially because you usually have very small teams or sometimes just a single developer developing these things, and so it makes a lot of sense to like put out parts of the game over the course of a long time. And look, I'm not a big fan of like the live service model because it keeps people playing the same games for a long time, and that's kind of the idea, right? You want people to play your game for as long as possible so you can keep making money and stuff off them. I'm not a fan of the live service model, and that's one of the reasons is because it keeps people playing just the same games and they don't get the chance to play other things. But there's a lot of reasons why I don't like the live service model. I think though that the chapter-based stuff is a little bit better. And I think it's something that should probably be reserved mostly for indie studios because it makes a lot of sense for them, right? Is it Tony Fox? Is that the guy that made Undertale? I really should probably know this. Yeah, Toby Fox. Yeah, I thought so. Toby Fox, like he, with Deltarune and that kind of stuff, it makes a lot of sense for him to do things like that. And it makes a lot of sense for Dispatch. It makes a lot of sense for things like that. And so I think it's a really cool thing that indies do. I don't think it's quite as cool when the big companies do it because it's not as necessary. And then that it's just to keep people coming back for as long as possible. But yeah, I just wanted to mention Dispatch because I think that's kind of an interesting thing. All right, so I know we kind of did this exact same thing. Well, I should say we talked about of nominations for an award competition. I don't have anything necessarily to say with that, but the Steam Awards were announced. The different categories for the Steam Awards were announced. The Steam Awards I would say they're a pretty big deal nowadays, but they're still not nearly as big a deal as like the Game Awards, right? I'm not going to actually read these off or anything. I was originally going to, and then I realized that they didn't have any nominees here listed on the article I found, and I'm not sure if that is listed somewhere. It probably is somewhere, but I realized that I don't really care too much about the Steam Awards myself, and so I don't really need to talk about that too much. But it was just another thing that I wanted to address so that people weren't asking me oh, what about the Steam Awards? Yes, I'm aware of the Steam Awards. You should go vote for the Steam Awards, right? It's a cool thing that if you're somebody who plays a lot of PC games, go vote for that stuff, right? It's cool to give indie studios who make good games credit for that kind of stuff. And so that's definitely a good thing for you to do if you're somebody who plays a lot of PC games. So Sony has reported that they've now made $1.5 billion in revenue on Steam. Now, of course, it's a pretty recent development that Sony's been putting their games on PC, and especially here very recently that they've been doing it very shortly after launch, or even in some cases, right, basically at launch. Helldivers 2 sold over 12 million copies, and the PC was a big, significant portion of that. I don't think they announced significant numbers, or not significant, accurate numbers. But some people were speculating that it could have been, as much as 30% of the people that bought it in the first 12 weeks buying it on PC. So it's definitely become a big thing now for Sony to release games on PC. Obviously, it's been a big thing for a while now, for quite a while, for Xbox games to come day one to PC. And so more and more we're seeing companies, these companies getting rid of their exclusives. They're putting things on PC, and really, PC is becoming more and more the all-in-one gaming platform, and you can do it legally now. You don't even have to just emulate stuff. Everybody except for Nintendo is doing that, and I know there's always the idea floating around. Some people are like, "Oh, Nintendo should put their games on PC." I think that's a terrible idea. I don't think they should do it. First of all, they like to streamline things. They like to streamline performance of games, and so having to think about making a new version specifically for PC, I think would be very difficult for Nintendo to do because they'd have to implement a lot of these different settings options that a lot of companies have. There's also the idea that a lot of their games rely on gimmicks from consoles, and this PC doesn't have any of those gimmicks. Obviously now it's true that with the Switch 2, the mouse mode and stuff is obviously easily compatible. And so there are situations where things could work to some point, but there's also always going to be things that don't really work very well. And on top of that, Nintendo, they're all about exclusives. That's the primary reason why just about everybody buys their consoles. The only thing is now, in the last generation and this one, now there are some people that buy the Nintendo console specifically because they're handheld and console. So it's definitely widened the audience. But generally speaking, historically, people only buy Nintendo consoles to play Nintendo games. And they might afterwards play a couple of other games as well. But primarily, they're going to buy the console for Nintendo games. And I mean, that's a general truth. It's been true forever. It's going to be true forever. It's never going to change. And it ought not to, right? And so it makes a lot of sense for Nintendo to keep down the route they're going down. Personally, I don't think it makes a ton of sense for PlayStation to be putting things on PC either, because it's a big part of their sales as well, is their exclusivity. And it used to be a big part of Xbox's sales, but unfortunately now they've given up on that whole idea of exclusive games. They're even putting Halo now on PlayStation, and obviously it's been on PC for a while, and so Xbox is just kind of dead as far as having exclusives. PlayStation is just about dead now too. Just in the last couple of years, they've gone from doing all right to they're also pretty much dead. And so it's really just Nintendo hanging on with the exclusives and stuff, and to hear that the PC stuff is working out so well for Sony is definitely crushing, right? I really wish exclusives would stay exclusive, and it may seem like a weird thing, like why would you want exclusives to be exclusive? But at the end of the day, if all the consoles are the same, if all of them have all of the same games, then they're all going to have a lot of the same features, and they're all going to limit innovation. When games are exclusive, it forces companies, especially, like the big three, it forces companies to take advantage of the hardware and to make changes to the hardware specifically to fit exclusive games. And overall, that drives innovation. A lot of new ideas are come up with. And it pushes the industry forward. And seeing things go all cross-platform, everything has to be all cross-platform, it really worsens the competition within the video game industry. And we're going to really see that, especially here soon. Especially if Xbox does die away, we're really going to start to see the consequences of that. Alright, so a lot of people were talking about the Steam Machine. I was one of those people. I had heard everywhere people were saying that this thing was going to be super cheap. It was going to be cheaper than a PS5. It was going to be like $400, maybe $500. A lot of people were very pumped about the Steam Machine and how it was going to be such a great thing. It was going to be way powerful, and it was going to be way cheap, and it was going to take over the industry, right? I was hearing all these things about, oh, the Steam Machine's going to take over. It's going to be the new thing. It's going to, all these things about the Steam Machine. All these things are false, because Steam, or Valve, I should say, has now confirmed that, indeed, the console is going to be closer in price to a PC than to a console, which obviously implies that this thing is probably more in the 800 range. I would say 700 or 800 based off that wording. Maybe even $1,000. I'm not going to, say for sure, but that seems to me like that is quite possible. So that's unfortunate, right? It definitely seemed like the Steam Machine was making strides to cheapen things like that, and now it's just, getting more expensive. At the end of the day, though, part of me is sort of happy, because this will keep the Steam Machine as a niche product. It won't bring it into the mainstream like a lot of people were saying it would. And had the Steam Machine come into the mainstream, it could have really messed with a lot of things. It could have really hurt a lot of things. And the fact that the Steam Machine has turned out to be basically just a PC, I think is going to really, honestly, I think it's going to be good for the games industry. Because as much as it would be good on some level to have a new competitor in the video game industry, it's also bad if they're coming in and, they don't have any physical media and they have things like that. And so, yes, it's bad that this thing is going to be as expensive as it is, but it honestly could end up meaning better things. Obviously, it's going to mean great things for Xbox, because it'll allow them to survive a little bit longer. And it'll probably mean better things for everybody, because the Steam Deck will remain the niche thing that some people might get here and there, but generally speaking, isn't super popular, and it's not going to make as many waves in the industry as people originally thought it would. So based on this information, I would say my expectation is that the Steam Machine will probably cost more around $800. And yeah, at the end of the day, if this thing's going to be as powerful as it is, that's pretty much on par with what you would expect. It's not a good deal. It's not a bad deal. It's just kind of it is what it is, right? That's how much the thing is going to cost. That's cool. So I don't really have anything else to say about it, but it is worth noting that the Steam Deck, or the Steam Machine, I keep saying Steam Deck, the Steam Machine is not going to be as cheap as originally it was going to be. Alright, so we talked a while ago now about Saudi Arabia buying EA, and I should say it's not the country of Saudi Arabia buying EA, but it is kind of the country of Saudi Arabia buying EA. It's Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, which is the PIF. And I'm not going to get into geopolitics and stuff, but basically, the PIF, they're a sovereign wealth fund, I think is how they label themselves. And the idea is they're sort of government controlled, And well, no, really, they're pretty much government controlled. But they also are literally, their entire mission is to buy things to widen Saudi Arabia's scope of influence. So I'm not going to get into the geopolitical stuff. You can say what you want about Saudi Arabia. You can believe Saudi Arabia, whether you like them or not. Doesn't matter to me. But the PIF, they're buying a lot of things. And so basically, the Saudi Arabian government now owns a bunch of video game publishers and owns large percentages of Nintendo, or owns large percentage of a lot of these different companies. And so whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's definitely going to have consequences on the video game industry, whether bad or good, right? I'm not going to get into my stance on this. I'm just going to say that that's what's happening, right? The Saudi Arabia government is basically buying video game companies. One of them, the most recently, they bought EA, right? That acquisition is still in the process of happening, but it'll probably be a couple of years, and then they will own EA, or at least the majority share of EA. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because the PIF, Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, has reported that they are limiting new investments as cash runs low, as recorded by GamesIndustry.biz. The PIF values its total investments at nearly $1 trillion in assets, but a significant percentage of these are hard-to-sell assets with no public valuation. As a result, the New York Times reports that the PIF reps have told international investors that it is unable to allocate for the near future. Now, I don't know what this is going to mean for the PIF. Are they going to lose a bunch of their properties? Are they going to sell a bunch of them off? Are they going to spin out into another company that owns a bunch of video game stuff? I don't know. I really don't know. But it's definitely worth noting that the PIF that has been buying up all these companies, it seems like they're going to slow down a little bit, and they might be having some troubles themselves. I find it really funny that EA was having a lot of internal issues, and then they get bought, and then immediately, because they're such a large company, now the company that bought them is now also having internal issues. So obviously what's going to happen here is EA is going to go defunct, Respawn is going to get sold to Nintendo, and we're going to get the next Star Wars Jedi Fallen whatever game. It's going to be a Switch 2 exclusive. That's obviously the takeaway to take away here. We're also going to have Battlefront 3, and it's going to not have loot boxes. So obviously that's what's going to happen now. Obviously that's all a joke. But anyways, there you go. PIF. There's basically the Saudi Arabian government buying up video game consoles. They're out of money. They're out of cash. They're out of dough. And so that's, I feel bad for them. Unfortunately, they only managed to rack up $1 trillion worth of assets. I know, it's quite a sad sob story. What a shame. So there you go. Whether you think that's good or bad, it will definitely have consequences. It'll have ramifications. There you go. That's all I'm going to say. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into the show. I'm kind of out of news stuff to talk about, and I probably need to get going because I want to make some videos, and I want to get this thing out on time because the podcast is already, it's about time for it to go out, and it's going to be probably about an hour late today. That's fine. I don't think it really matters too much. But yes, podcast is going out, so I want to get out of here as fast as possible. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the show. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can go watch the Not Just Nintendo channel, which has all these same podcast episodes, but you can watch them over there, and eventually I can move the podcast over there exclusively, and then things can be decluttered. If you're already watching on that channel, then thanks. Hello. Glad to see you. You can also listen on Spotify. You can listen on Amazon Music or podcast, whatever they call it. You can listen on, I think it's on Deezer, and it's on iHeartRadio. So there's a few little places for you there. I mean, I imagine there's literally not a single person listening on iHeartRadio. If you're on iHeartRadio, give me a shout. And you can do that by emailing the show with any other questions, comments, concerns. You can say hello if you're from iHeartRadio. You can say hello if you're from anywhere, honestly. And I'll happily read out your message, if you'd like me to, on the show. And I'll answer it if it's a question. You can email the show at notjustnintendo@gmail.com. That is NOTJUSTNINTENDO@gmail.com. You can also, like I said, leave a comment if you're on YouTube on either of the channels, or if you're on Spotify, you can also leave a comment. So do all that stuff. Join the Discord down below. There's a lot of cool things that happen in the Discord. We talk a lot about a lot of cool things. You can get video alerts if you so choose about my YouTube videos and things like that. We also have a Minecraft server that we run out of there, and so there's a small community of people on there. We like to build stuff. There's a lot of conflict. It's kind of fun, so you can join that as well. So anyways, that's all I'm going to say for today. Thanks all for listening. I will see you all next week with episode 34 of Not Just Nintendo. Catch you guys next time.